I'd just like to extend a very hearty thank you to each of you here this evening, not least Marcelo, who's made perhaps far longer a journey to get here this evening, coming from the distant shores of Buenos Aires. So it's a great honor, in fact, to welcome Marcelo. It's a unique enough occasion for the Irish Landscape Institute to have someone coming from distant shores, not only to discuss their own work, but perhaps also to discuss some of that work which exists here in the capital city, here in Dublin, and to present that in the historic foundations of Dublin City itself. Here at the Wood Quay venue is, of course, in and of itself something of significance. And I'd like to sort of welcome each of you in person. Looking forward to this. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome, with a big boulabus, Mr. Marcelo D'Andrea.
Thank you all. My English is very bad. I speak like a Tarzan, no, like a cheetah, like the monkey. She's my wife and my translator. I'm very happy to be here. I have a presentation for you, for all. And the technology helped me to communication.
Yes, he tried to do it himself, trying to speak, and then, but artificial intelligence made it better.
Take it easy, take it easy.
So, for you to understand, this will be working better.
Well.
Yes.
No.
Okay, he wants to thank you a lot about being here, about everyone coming here, and it's a great honor for him to be here.
Una gran sorpresa a todos los que están acá que hablan español.
He's actually very, very happy with all the people who speak Spanish here, and most of them he's ex-students in university. So most of them he was his professor.
Una alegría.
He is really happy.
Bueno, comenzamos.
Okay,
Bien.
we'll start.
Good evening. It is a great pleasure for me to return to Dublin and reconnect with my past in this place, which in many ways became the launching platform for some of my most important professional projects and works. Since my English is still as poor as it was on my first trip here 25 years ago, I took the liberty of writing my talks so that I could read it to you. But thanks to artificial intelligence, I will also play it as a recording so that I can freely point out on the screen what I would like you to observe. My message to students and young professionals is based on sharing the theoretical foundation behind all my projects. This theoretical basis can be explained through a simple game. I ask you to look at these 9 dots and try to connect them with 4 straight lines without lifting the pencil from the paper. For me, these 9 points represent the site that I must design: a garden, a square, a park, or even a city. And just as the solution to the game requires breaking beyond the imaginary limits of the drawing, in design we must break the physical, material, psychological, social, and environmental boundaries that surround a project site.
If you want draw, draw. If you want proof. That is the draw.
This idea, relating the project to its environment, relating the design to the place where it is located, is the foundation of the work developed in my studio. It also gives the title to this lecture: Reality as a Projectual Possibility. Tonight I will show you 4 projects that marked my professional journey. Let me begin with this image: the Faculty of Architecture, Design and Urbanism of the University of Buenos Aires. This is the place that brought together Fernando Abelliro, Mauro Romero, and myself. They were both in their early 30s, working as teaching assistants in the architecture program, and I was only 28 years old, working as a teaching assistant in the landscape architecture program. We knew each other from the corridors of the faculty. It was actually them who insisted on convincing me to participate in a competition in Ireland, something that seemed completely crazy to me, since none of the three of us spoke English, and it was our wives who translated the competition brief for us. Carolina, my wife since July 2002, acted as our translator. When we won the competition and came to receive the award in December 2003, she had to work very hard, because none of the three partners understood any English. We received the prize, visited the site, met the government team. I especially remember Declan O'Leary, who was always very charismatic with us from the beginning, and we interviewed several local firms until we finally decided to hire Laura McGahey, who would become our local partner. After that, we traveled to Barcelona with Carolina to spend Christmas, since we had many friends there. I had previously lived and studied in that city while completing my master's in landscape architecture as a student of Dr. Rosa Barba and Martha Schwartz. When we returned to Buenos Aires, we discovered that our story had been published in many newspapers and magazines. It became quite big news in the local architecture world. 3 unknown young professionals had won an international competition in Ireland. I would like to tell the young professionals here, especially those working in landscape architecture, something very important. Always make your professional fees very clear before starting a project or entering into interdisciplinary work with architects. I learned this lesson at a very young age. During the competition phase, when we had not yet won anything, we were all friends and partners. Everything I contributed to the competition was welcomed. But everything changed when the Euros appeared. That is when you truly discover who is standing beside you. Not everyone behaves correctly. NORDELTA Linear Park. After the news appeared in the press, a well-known Argentine businessman, whose sister used to play golf with me at the club where my family spent time, invited me to participate in a private competition to design the landscape for a development of 20,000 hectares called Nordelta. Nordelta began developing in 1998 and planted its first trees in 2000. However, vegetation was growing very slowly and many species were dying. Therefore, a landscape competition was organized to solve the problem, starting with the linear park along the main avenue. The issue was that the backyards of private houses faced the main avenue. These lots had no vegetation and were visually exposed to everyone walking through the public Central Park. Many owners had paid large amounts of money for these plots and felt uncomfortable being so exposed. After analyzing the water of the lagoons, I discovered something interesting. Instead of being fresh water like the Rio de la Plata, it was actually salty. That explained why the lagoons had transparent water. The salt caused the mud particles from the river to settle at the bottom. The Rio de la Plata appears brown because of its sediment. This engineering project had drilled through the soil until reaching the underground water table beneath Buenos Aires, which is saline. The entire development had been constructed through hydraulic filling. Soil was extracted from the riverbed and used to create artificial islands. That soil contained large quantities of salt. As the roots of trees and shrubs grew through this saline substrate and eventually reached the salty water of the lagoons, the plants died. So I decided to use the reality of the construction process itself as the inspiration for the design solution. The idea was simple: create gentle landforms, small hills about 1 meter high, that would allow shrubs and trees to grow in fertile, clean soil placed above the saline layer. At the same time, since we were planting shrubs already about 1 meter tall, the combined height of the plant and the mound quickly solved the visual exposure problem between pedestrians and the private houses. Using native vegetation and adaptable exotic species, the landscape developed rapidly. Today, Nordelta has become one of the most successful real estate developments in Latin America. BALTRA Airport, Galapagos. One of my powerful clients, who had concessions for several airports across South America, invited me to join a team of architects to design the Baltra Airport in the Galapagos Islands, Ecuador. The original airport in Baltra was extremely rudimentary and dangerous for tourists. The Galapagos Islands are famous for their unique ecosystems and landscapes, which played a key role in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. The goal was to design the first ecological and sustainable airport in the world, meaning a terminal that would operate without conventional air conditioning for passengers. Only the control equipment rooms required mechanical cooling. The design optimizes energy use, lighting, and water consumption. Recycled and ecological materials were used in the construction. The architecture is deeply conditioned by the landscape, and the architecture itself defines interior courtyards that each contain their own landscape. According to prevailing wind patterns, the terminal building was rotated 45 degrees to reduce risks and lower the temperature impact from aircraft turbines. Large roof overhangs provide shade, and the building uses local stone. A system of underground tunnels, located 15 meters below ground, channels cooler subterranean air to naturally ventilate the building. This passive system can reduce interior temperatures by up to 5 degrees Celsius compared to the exterior. The building is organized around 6 open courtyards that use mesh screens instead of glass windows, allowing breezes to pass through. The vegetation is entirely native and was planted following the patterns of nature itself, without rhythm, order, or geometric composition. It had to appear as if no human intervention had taken place. I also learned how local inhabitants plant vegetation by stacking stones to create small cones of shade that collect dew during day-night temperature changes, providing moisture without irrigation. The airport includes 3 wind turbines and photovoltaic roofs. Finally, nature kept growing, and today, the finished image is as if the building had rested on the existing nature, as if there had been no intervention in the environment and everything were natural, even though each specimen was planted one by one. The project received numerous international awards, including the CEMEX Award for Sustainable Landscape Architecture in Monterrey, Mexico. Plaza San Martin, TRENQUELAUQUEN. Now I would like to tell you about a project that I am currently developing for a small city 520 kilometers from Buenos Aires, Plaza San Martin in the city of Trenque Lauquen, which has around 30,000 inhabitants. Trenque Lauquen means round lagoon in the indigenous language. Like many Argentine plazas, the original design followed the traditional asterisk pattern. While this pattern has been repeated in many cities, it does not create any meaningful relationship with its environment. It could exist in Buenos Aires, Trenque Lauquen, or even Dublin. But in our office we do not design objects for mass production like this pencil. A pencil is designed for all hands in the world. But a plaza must belong to its place. We studied the buildings surrounding the plaza and distinguished between public and private ones. Following the urban tradition introduced by the Roman Empire, the Cardo, north-south, and Decumanus, east-west, and later adopted by the Spanish colonial system in South America, cities were built around a central void, the Plaza Mayor. The most important civic buildings were placed around this central space. Our proposal reorganizes the square by emphasizing public buildings as a unified spatial system while distinguishing them from private buildings. 1. San Martin Monument. 2. Church. 3. Honorable Deliberative Council. 4. Municipality. 5. Social Assistance Center. Through an elevated pavement aligned with the sidewalk level, we unify the public buildings and incorporate streets and sidewalks into a larger civic space while still allowing controlled vehicle movement. All existing trees are preserved. The vegetation areas are reorganized into new planting beds with seating and lighting. The result is an old plaza embraced by the new plaza. The statue of General San Martin no longer functions only as the geometric center, but as one of the vertices of the new spatial structure. And now a new social idea emerges. The center of the plaza is no longer a monument. The center of the plaza is the people. The place where citizens gather to protest political decisions or celebrate that Argentina has won the World Cup again.
Bicentennial Park of the Independence of Argentina Technopolis. A week before Lorenzo, my only son was born. The national government selected me among 7 professionals who were invited to participate in the project of a 50-hectare park on the infantry regiment of the Army that was unused and would be transformed into the new Bicentennial Park of Independence. The park features a welcome square with a large esplanade to receive many visitors, especially intended for the educational participation of public schools of the nation. The idea of the project is based on the entrance of a robotic hand that extends along 2 main paths where different exhibits are located. They are from the 23 provinces that make up the national territory. It extends across 5 fingers, each of which is based on the 4 elements: air, fire, earth, and water, the 5th element being imagination. Each of these paths contains stands of companies and institutions related to the elements. For example, in the Earth path, related to paleontology, appear the dinosaurs that inhabited our Patagonia. With the air element, everything related to the Air Force and the development of aeronautics. With water, the Navy forces as well as the study of fisheries along the Argentine coasts. Related to fire, the sun and all photovoltaic energy appeared. And so it is with each of the elements. The park is a success, visited by thousands of people each year. Railway Square, Colegiales. We won the National Binding Project Competition in association with architect Oliverio Nasmias in 2018. And we started from the premise of observing that the housing units of a building facing the interior of the urban block have a lower economic value than those facing the front of the city block. But the housing units that are really more expensive are those that have an open view towards a park or an urban void. The Colegiales Railway Park Competition included the design of the park and the layout of the plot for the construction of 80,000 square meters of multifamily housing in the city of Buenos Aires. The competition aimed to address this urban void of the former railway beach in the city of Colegiales within the municipality of Buenos Aires, Argentina. In the competition rules, it was requested that sheet number 1 include an image of the proposal's insertion within a predetermined photo that was provided as mandatory, which for us was a mistake and a self-trap made unintentionally by those who organized the competition. This major error resulted in most of the 47 participants proposing a housing alignment as shown in the drawings, allowing for a linear park between the railway tracks and the buildings. In this way, we proposed our first project option. Then options 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 followed, and so on, until we reached number 13. This was the one that convinced us to understand that the only way to respect the existing neighbors and not devalue their homes was to understand that the city is not seen from a drone at the crossing of the railroad tracks with the avenue, but that it must be observed from the location of the houses, and that we had to make a new render from the city towards the void. In this way, the proposal was defined with a series of perpendicular buildings along the project, determining, instead of a linear park, a sum of smaller plazas that maximize the environmental and spatial quality of the urban landscape, allowing the use of plazas of different scales. Just as the contest rules required, we made the render that was requested, but the first building already hid the rest of the proposal, and only a plaza with railway pavilions could be seen, adapted into bars and gastronomic service buildings. Seeking to find a natural space in the city center, we developed a low-maintenance proposal using native vegetation, encouraging the appearance of a fauna of butterflies, hummingbirds, and birds that were not common in this area of the city, given the density of the constructed buildings. And of course, we had to make a render from the city towards the urban space, where we showed this continuation of the urban fabric and the appearance of these plazas, where perhaps the largest one was 3 hectares and respected a path movement derived from the urban fabric. In this way, all the buildings had apartments that faced the front toward the street, or those that faced the back had an open view towards the square. In this way, we also maintained the open view of all the existing buildings, and with the quality of the public space, the economic value of their properties improved. Everyone benefited, both new and old owners. The images from the renders show this spatial quality and some of those crazy ideas that will never be built, but that allow the designer's imagination to play. The work is currently under construction. I hope on my next trip to show you photos of the completed project.
Father Collins Park, Dublin. Speaking about Father Collins Park here in Dublin may sound a bit strange, since most people in this room already know it. So instead of repeating the same story, I will tell you the story behind the scenes. It was June 2003. I had just won my first national competition in Argentina for the Buenos Aires waterfront, and I felt like I was touching the sky. One day I met Fernando at the faculty cafe, something very typical in Buenos Aires before classes begin, and he told me about this competition in Dublin and that they needed a landscape architect. I told him I did not speak English. He said, "Neither do we, but our wives can translate." And that is how it began. Back then things were very different. Google Earth did not exist yet. It would only appear in 2005. The competition boards had to be printed and mounted on cardboard. The physical model measured 2 meters by 1 meter. When you live in the south of the world, everything becomes more complicated. For example, when we sent the first package of competition boards, FedEx mistakenly sent them to Miami instead of Dublin. We almost went crazy. 2 months of work and we were about to be disqualified. Fortunately, the organizers understood and allowed the delivery. And as you know, we were selected among the 5 finalists. The boulevard, the ribbon, the lake, the vegetation. These 4 elements together synthesize the spatial idea of the park. The project is structured around 5 core actions. First, the place. We understand the site as a space located away from the urban center. A windswept coastal area, surrounded by open land that will eventually be urbanized. It is crossed by streams running transversely. It has minimal slope, high rainfall, and fertile soil, covering a total area of 15 hectares. Second, the boundaries. The site is currently framed by 4 perimeter streets, lined with low-rise houses, which, in the future, will evolve into multi-family buildings of up to 6 stories. In response, the park project takes advantage of an existing line of vegetation, along one edge, to establish a dense green ring that encloses the park. This strategy clearly defines the interior versus the exterior. As a result, those inside the park experience a continuous natural landscape, seeing trees rather than surrounding buildings, while residents outside perceive a unified mass of greenery, instead of the visual and acoustic activity of the park. Within this boundary zone, parking is integrated through a slight inward offset, creating organized parking areas and ensuring accessibility from all sides. The main access is from the avenue that crosses the site, which is also the only route served by public transportation. Third, the spatial structure. The park is organized through a system of 7 transverse paths and 3 longitudinal ones. Together, they define the spatial distribution of the different programs. At the core of this structure lies the ribbon, the main organizing element of the park, a linear space, 15 meters wide and 800 meters long, that articulates the entire composition. Fourth, the programs. The park incorporates a wide range of recreational and sports facilities. 5 football pitches, 1 camogie field, an Olympic training track, a skate park, picnic areas for families, children's play spaces, basketball courts, and a perimeter running track, with fitness stations. It also includes changing rooms and restrooms, as well as a floating stage, located on the main lake, paired with an amphitheater, designed for live music performances, a fountain, which helps regulate the water system, simultaneously acts as a scenic backdrop for the stage floating on the lake. Fifth, the identity. The project establishes a strong identity through the integration of 5 wind turbines, harnessing the site's wind conditions to generate renewable energy. This transforms the park into the first ecological and sustainable public park of its kind, funded through public investment. Additionally, a system of constructed wetlands is introduced to treat wastewater from park facilities, allowing for its reuse in irrigation when necessary. Materiality also reinforces the project's identity. Concrete incorporating local black volcanic stone creates dark grey surfaces that resonate with the Irish landscape. Finally, the use of native and well-adapted exotic vegetation further strengthens the connection to the local environment. Another funny story: the 5 wind turbines that became the symbol of the park were originally included simply because our section drawing looked too thin and visually weak. We needed something tall to give visual weight to the drawing. None of us had ever worked with wind turbines before, yet they ended up becoming one of the park's defining elements. I remember that this image of the final plant was going to have a white background, but I had a student working in my studio who had a boyfriend studying graphic design, and he had come to keep his girlfriend company because it was Sunday and she had to work for the contest in my office. Talking with this guy, Diego Menta, now grown, he would have been 5 years younger than me, suggested that we make the sheet with a black background and with the pattern of this green color. I told him to try something, and when he showed it to me, I loved it and sent it by email to Fernando and Mauro. I asked him how he came up with doing something like that, and he said, "It's just that my favorite movie is Matrix. If this is going to be the park of the future, what better image than the Matrix?" The park is the result of the amount of work of a professional Argentine-Irish team. Without the mutual collaboration, this park wouldn't have been possible. Here we have the synthesis of the final architectural landscape plan with which the park was built. 1. He began the work with the earth movements and the contribution of firm soil. 2. The bases of the concrete ribbon began to be assembled. 3. Preparation of the iron structure. 4. Assembly of wind turbine bases. 5. Assembly of wind turbine bases. 6. Survey of the existing vegetation to prune and transplant. 7. The locker room was built. 8. Assembly of the ribbon with 3 concrete beams and precast slabs mounted dry. 9. Preparation of internal path of the existing forest and planting of trees of different sizes, so that it resembles a real forest. 10. Assembly of the wind turbines. 11. Assembly of wind turbines using cranes with a lifting capacity of 45 tons. 12. Preparation of sanitary installation for water fountain. 13. Formwork assembly for inclined plane of water fountain. 14. Reinforced concrete inclined plane for water fountain. 15. Protection with volcanic stone from islands so that water does not stain the reinforced concrete. 16. Placement of the volcanic stone from island finished so that the water does not stain the reinforced concrete. 17. Children's play areas. 17 years ago, they were very modern. Today it would be necessary to invest in a refresh of the park's image. Government officials, we are willing to work with you again, ha ha ha. 18. Something similar happens with many places in the park. For example, the skate track. It could be updated and even expanded to bicycles and kids of different ages. Today, as a parent and being older, I look at spaces with other perspectives, more inclusive of age and gender. 19. The transverse roads were built using Irish volcanic stone, achieving a particular concrete with local texture and color. Again, this idea of reality is a projective possibility. 20. The perimeter sports stations with their different activity programs. 21. The perimeter path was built and the mortuaries were finished. 22. The sports fields were planted. 23. The vegetation corresponding to the plans was planted and staked as explained in the construction specifications. 24. The lagoons were finally filled and aquatic species were cultivated, mainly fish. 25. Until finally on May 11, 2009, the work was inaugurated with the national flags of Argentina and Ireland and with a very Irish sky, a little rain and wind. 26. Here the three of them together on the day of the inauguration. 27. Here are the main ones of the Argentine team, the local partners Arj Laura Magahi, and the government team. Park, May 12, 2009. Finally, the work for me is a dream to see it carried out. Knowing everything that was suffered along the way to see it so beautiful. I thank the people of Ireland and their governors for allowing US to create this beauty. Final message. To conclude, I would like to share a simple formula that we have always used in our studio. C plus H times A. C equals knowledge. H equals skill. Or equals attitude. Knowledge and skill add. But attitude multiplies. What truly differentiates people is their attitude. Take a child, for example. If you ask a child why they love their father, they will not say, "My father has 15 years of professional experience and excellent domestic skills." They will say, "I love my father because he plays football with me." We love or dislike people not for their knowledge or skills, but for their attitude. The most successful athletes are those who train with the most intensity. Their attitude makes them different. So to the young people here today, if you want to make a difference, attitude is the way. Landscape architecture is a tool of intellectual opinion. It is the place from which, as professionals, we say, in what way we want to live. Thank you very much.